Today, we're digging right in on the importance of self-identification in shadow work and the impact it has on our healing. And this is an important topic. So lots of reading material there for you. But I want you to understand that if you have a view of yourself where you're a mess up, right? Where you're screwing up often, where you're not really worthwhile, if I don't believe that I have much power, that is really going to negatively impact my ability to do my shadow work in any meaningful way. So I know that because we're starting at the beginning, it's a ridiculous ask to ask you to start believing in yourself right now. But I want you to suspend those beliefs for a second. Okay? I'm not asking you to abandon them. Okay, I'm asking you to suspend them for a little while. That will allow you to do this work in a much deeper way, and that's important. What you think about yourself informs your reality in a more profound way than anything else will. If I think that I am worthless, then I will seek to validate that assumption. I want to validate my assumptions about myself because in doing so, it keeps me safe. Right? You might ask yourself, why would I want to think less about myself? Well, if I think less about myself, I'm not really requiring much of myself, am I? I have a lot of excuses why the world is messed up, right? I know exactly what to expect out of the world, not much, because I'm not much and I don't deserve much. Okay? We're going to talk a lot in this course about some of the beliefs that we have and what they feed in us. But I promise you, if you are engaged in a mindset or a way of being or a pattern of behavior, it's because it serves you at some level. And our job together is to uncover why it serves you. Now, a lot of what you know about yourself has been handed down to you from childhood, right? You were born into this world with rose-colored glasses. And a lot of our parents, not out of any nefarious aims, but simply to try to prepare us for this world, they took our glasses off our face, stomped on them, put them back on our face and said, this is how I want you to see the world. And this is how I want you to see your place in it. They wanted to prepare us for the suffering that they knew would come, but they didn't realize all they did was heap more suffering on us. So at the root of what we're doing, especially in this very beginning, is we have to look at the false images that we have built up in ourselves and really get in alignment with the authenticity of who we were always meant to be. So in journal prompt 2, you're going to introduce yourself authentically. And I'm not going to talk too much about that journal prompt, but I do want you to meet yourself. Okay. Now, in my healing work, I find that people want to intellectualize their healing a lot. They do it all in their mind. They don't want to meet the feelings that are around it. And not only do they not want to meet the feelings, but what they do is they look down on what happened in the past because they're at a higher perspective. And they look down on it and they say, oh, that happened 30 years ago. It's not a big deal. That happened when I was 5. It's okay. But to the version of you that experienced that, I promise you it's not okay, and dismissing it is harmful. So I just want to take you to the jungle just to see yourself. And I want you to look from 2 different perspectives. All right. And we're just going to look today. That's all we're going to do. We're not going to interact a whole lot. Go ahead and close your eyes. You are in a dark place. There's nothing in front. There's nothing behind. There's nothing above. There's nothing below. You are floating in nothingness. Be there. And now see the door light up in front of you. Reach out your arm and see it open. Blinding white light. And as your eyes adjust, you're looking down at your feet in the grass. Wiggle your toes. Make it real. Find the sun with your forehead. Find it. There we go. Smell the air. Make it real. You are there in this beautiful place. You're free. Go ahead and just shoot up in the sky and then come back down. There we go. And now I want to call in the 7-year-old version of yourself. I want you to kneel down to eye level, 1 hand on each side of their face. And I just want you to see them. That's all I want you to do. Just see them. And now I want to call in the 89-year-old version of yourself. See them come in, one hand on each side of the face, and see them. Just see them. And now as you stand with them, I want you to see a huge mirror appear in front of all three of you. You are standing in the middle, holding hands with your 7-year-old self and your 89-year-old self. Look at the truth of who you are. Look at yourself. And now I just want you to utter 3 words. I love you. And just feel that energy come back to you. Feel that warmth. There we go. Open your eyes. Let's focus on authentic expression, understanding its importance and its impact. This is going to lead right into journal prompt 3, exploring authentic expression versus performing, and exercise 3, a deep exploration of your authentic self, right? So I mentioned before that our parents did most of us a grave disservice by trying to prepare us for the world instead of allowing us to kind of really self-determine. Never mind if you grew up in environments that are higher control, right? If you come from a higher control culture, or you were exposed to higher control religion, or maybe there were some beliefs around gender role and identity that felt higher control, then your ability to self-determine and to grow into yourself as you would have naturally was severely stunted. And so what I find is that a lot of people think they're being authentic, but they really don't even know who they are because they've never had a chance to explore that. And a lot of the people who struggle the most are also people who had a lot of trauma. And I say all the time, you do not ever think about thriving if you're struggling to survive. And in childhood, a lot of us were really struggling to survive. So we didn't have the luxury of being able to really think about who we were authentically. Not that we even had the wisdom to understand what being authentic was, right? And so how I see this play out in a lot of people is maybe you were really excited about things as a child, really curious, and you went to your parents and you were excited to share something with them and they brushed you off. And they told you that you were being annoying or not now. You got a message that this thing was not important. And over time, you learn just to shut up. You learn just not to talk about it, right? Or maybe, I know for me, something my mom used to do is my older sister was always very scared to go talk to people. So maybe she wanted us to ask someone for something or to go up to a counter. My sister was scared, so she would tell me, Nat, you're so brave. I was not brave. I was not brave. She forced me into that. And it hurt me deeply. But I also grew up thinking that it was a bad thing to ever be afraid because I was supposed to be the brave one. And so even when I was afraid, I would dismiss my own feelings and I would pretend to be something that I wasn't. I've heard for years, fake it till you make it. Right? But I think it's much better not to fake anything at all and to live in your truth. And while we had very little power as children to self-determine and to live authentically, we have tremendous power as adults. Unfortunately, a lot of us are still living in our power position from childhood. We have stopped standing in our power at the point that that power was taken from us. And even as adults, we don't reclaim that power. We just kind of continue in that same vein. And we do ourselves a major disservice when we do that. Okay? So what is being authentic versus what is being performing? If you are performing, you're probably always looking for validation. Right? Because you need validation that the performance is good. If you are performing, you probably have some checklist, some timeline for when you're supposed to get things done. And if you haven't got these major milestones completed, marriage check, children check, career check, you feel like a failure because you're comparing yourself to other people. When you are being authentic, there's no one to compare yourself to because there's no one else like you. The only time the comparison works is when you are performing. It's the only time. because I'm looking at the other performers and how they play their role, and I'm comparing myself to them. So if I am committed to living authentically, that is to say, to being a weirdo as opposed to a normie, then there is no timeline. There is no comparison. There is no one who can direct me in that way. People who perform a lot, who are masking a lot, they are always looking for direction. So they will chase fads and trends because they need direction. They are trying to signal that they belong in a space. Look at me. I have this cup that everyone else has. I belong. You're performing. Now, you might be authentic and like that cup. Sure. But then that cup doesn't become a central figure in your life. You're not showing off your collection of these cups. You're not seeking validation through ownership of these things or by participating in a fad. There is a lot of very aesthetic personalities to choose from nowadays. And I like to call those things prepackaged personalities for people who don't know themselves. Because when you know yourself, there probably isn't this very clear box that you fit so good in. You're probably not, because you're being pretty authentic. The only time you're going to fit really well into an aesthetic is when you are seeking to perform something. Okay? That's the only time. And I'm not saying that performing something is worse than being authentic, because that's not always true, especially if you're unhealed but being authentic, right? There are times when some of us believe that it is appropriate to mask, to perform something. Maybe we're at work, or maybe we're around family we don't feel safe around, or maybe we're in other situations where we think it's not appropriate to show up as our authentic self. If that's what you need to do to make yourself safe, that's fine. My issue isn't performing. My issue is, do you know who you really are? Because if the only thing you know about yourself is the performance, that's unfortunate. You don't know yourself. So how do you know what's best for you? How do you know what relationship is best? How do you know what really serves you best? How do you know that the decisions you make are the decisions that you have chosen and not something that someone else has forced you into? Because inevitably what I see in a lot of my clients is people who say, I pursued this career because it's what my mother wanted me to do, it's what my father wanted me to do, but I'm miserable. I'm miserable. That's what performing will do. And in performing for long periods of time, you are always at the mercy of the audience. Always. If they don't validate you, how exhausted do you feel? How rejected? If they validate you, how much better do you feel? Okay? A lot of your parents did not validate you properly in childhood, so you are desperately seeking validation externally, and you will do anything for that validation, including abandoning your authentic self to meet them where they demand you perform. And over time, you will grow resentful and you will grow angry at having to uphold this performance. And what's worse is if you start interpersonal relationships on any level with that performance and you ever seek to become your authentic self, there will be no space made for it. Of course not. That wasn't the foundation of the relationship. You weren't showing your real self. So now that you want to get comfortable and you want to show your real self, it's rejected. And you think it's rejected because something's wrong with the true you. No, it's not that. It's that you hid it. You did a bait and switch. And even if people don't have the emotional maturity to understand that, how much they dislike that, nobody likes that. So if you start an interaction with someone, you start a relationship in a performance, understand you will have to maintain that performance to maintain that relationship. And when people come to me and they tell me that they want liberation, I know that this is one place that they desperately seek liberation. Because over time, that performance will tire your muscles. It will wear you out. It will drain you. You will feel less and less like you are worthy of being seen truthfully. And so then you must stick to that performance. Right? So it is important to take the time to understand who you really are. And to do that, we need to look at all the ways that you've been told to be something other than who you are. Maybe you were told you're too sensitive. Maybe you were told you're too loud. You're too curious. You're too inquisitive. You're too this. You're too that. The way that you see that, no, you shouldn't see it that way. The way that you took that, no, you shouldn't take it that way. In this way, a lot of us have been gaslit all throughout our childhood to think that our authentic way of seeing the world and being in the world was wrong. And we must adopt someone else's view of the world as our own, because in doing so, we will be safer. But it doesn't make us safer. It makes us weaker. It makes us easier to be preyed upon. It makes it easier for us to be abused and used and mistreated. You must first find your authentic self before you can ever stand in the power of that authentic self.